So I want to talk about something that's been living in my head rent free for about 24 hours now. So last night I was at a New Year's Eve get together, and I had a kind of a conversation with this person, and it uh, it shouldn't have bothered me, but it did, and it's gonna sound so stupid at first because it really is. The premise is stupid, but I think it actually is underlies something that's actually incredibly important. So when I explain this to whoever's listening, just understand that it's gonna sound stupid, really stupid at first, right? So I made some like I was waiting on the food, and I said something about like I'll just eat like the butter, right? And this guy was like, "Oh yeah, like well honestly, it'd be better just to eat the butter than it would be to eat bread." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, like bread is like one of the worst things you could possibly eat." And I don't really know this guy's diet too. I don't know if he's on like the keto diet or if it's his own thing that he has. But it's like it was like very like I didn't like I'm not an expert and I didn't really know what to say. But I did think about it and I did kind of figure out why it bothered me. Because like my thought like I'm from Ithaca, New York. So if I were my thought process in my head was like, okay, I don't know really like too much about this, but I know if I went to like the nutrition expert at the Cornell lab of you know dietary botany, they would be like, no, yeah, you're right. It would be worse to do that than to do this. And I think um, what's going on is that right now, um, with our current level of biology, we don't really understand certain levels of what's good or bad for you in regards to like processed food. Okay, so let me like talk about this for a second. So right now, there's like kind of like a macro and a micronutrients, right? Like macronutrients are like your main three, like your fats, your carbs, and your proteins. And then there's like carbs breaks into like sugar, glucose is glucose, and like you can get it in different types of ways. That's not as relevant, but the macronutrients, like the three big ones, are really relevant. And the relevant point, and the reason that the problem here is that the premise that was really being said, in my opinion, was um, there's sort of like diet is like a tiered system, right? So it's like there's like no processed food because usually like when people have a problem with bread because it's processed. Like bread is not what we have today. It's not like just like ground wheat. Like it is, but it's like been like dyed white, made to be made chemically to be super digestible. Like preservatives are put into it too, and like the result of that is that when you have bread, it is completely like different from something you would see like naturally, like butter, which is you can just make by just like that's not what I'm like the butter twister thing that you can make. It's not much different now from how it is in the past. That might even be true actually, but I don't know what the process of making butter these days. I just know that butter is like there are things out there that are less processed, and bread is very processed. That's the only point that needs to be gotten across here. So the underlying assumption here, I think, that this person was operating off of was like any amount of food that is processed is worse than any amount of food that isn't processed. So let me say that again. Any amount of food that is processed to like the extent that bread is worse than any amount of food that is not processed. And that's like the problem, right? Because we know, science knows that like a balanced diet is more important from what we can see in our tests than exactly like the type of like bread and like that you're eating, right? So if I were to eat like a stick of butter, that would imbalance my diet. I would be getting way too much of a certain type of fat than I would be getting a protein and carb. If I eat bread, I'm probably not like maybe it's bad. There's chemicals in it that are just bad for us, um, but it wouldn't be really hurting me as much as like if I were to start eating like that much fat in that type of form every day. I would have heart issues. I would have cholesterol issues that would be worse than the issues I would be having if I were to eat white bread every day. Now, so I want to talk about like sort of like why like these fads exist, like the keto diet, and these like people trying to like say, oh, these diets help. And this is something that's super interesting, and it's that it's really hard to test diet, and there's a lot of reasons why, but mostly it's because it's not something you can control for. So, like, there's a reason that people don't really argue about like if running in the morning is healthy or if cigarettes are unhealthy, because the way we can test that is have someone who's running and someone who's not running, and then sort of just take the people who are not running and kind of as a control group, and then have them run and see how it affects them and have them stop. Same as cigarettes. You can have someone smoking it, you can test them, then you can have them stop, you can test them, then you can have them start again, you can test that. There's all these different ways to test it with control groups, and that's what makes like results in peer-reviewed testing, which is what we use to base everything off of to get good results. You can't do the diet though, because you're always eating something. You can't just stop eating. Like there's no control group, right? So on a micro level at least, it's very difficult. The other difficulty that makes it even harder is that like it's a game of whack-a-mole, because there's like thousands of different chemicals that come out every year that they put in different types of food that are processed, right? So as soon as the FDA it's like, all right, this one's bad. Like this is a bad thing that shouldn't be in this food. That company's already like seen the writing on the wall and moved to like another chemical that we have no idea about yet, because most of the testing hasn't been as audited yet as we would like. So what it creates is a situation where people don't really know how bad some of this stuff are, and like when that happens, we fill in the blanks with stories we tell ourselves. So like today, I'm gonna give you a great example of this. So today I saw that there was a truck that drove up to like Trump's hotel. It's a Cybertruck and like blew up. And I was like, okay, clearly that's someone who doesn't like Elon Musk or Trump, who's like, fuck you, I'm gonna blow someone up and I'm gonna make a spectacle out of this new truck that is a representative of Tesla and Elon Musk, right? But then I like read later that it was like just a malfunction, like a horrible malfunction, which has no political leaning. It was just a coincidence. So, and now I know. But before I knew, I had and here's the thing: I was more sure of what my speculation was of what was going on with less information than I am now that I know it was a default. So that's the problem. Is we actually a lot of the time have more confidence when it's our speculation that fits our preconceived notions than when it's something that is just that we actually understand the full nuance of. So a lot of the time we already feel like we know what the best nutrition options are, and there's a diet for every nutrition out there. So we end up gravitating towards a diet that we already believe, and we believe it pretty wholeheartedly. So here comes the problem now. Here comes the actual problem with this now. Because you might be thinking to yourself, right, like, okay, so maybe, sure, we have all these, it's hard to test for it. It's hard to it's hard for a variety of reasons, but shouldn't people if people don't really know, what's the harm of believing something that you think might help, even if it doesn't have that peer-reviewed backing that these big institutions would have? And the reason is that it stops you from being, if you think you found the answer, you stop looking for the answer. That's the problem. So and the problem is these fads don't, like these diets don't just stick in their lane of like, well, we exist where the CDC fails. Like they don't just say like, okay, like we don't know what's in bread, so we're just gonna, and if it's bad or not, so we're just gonna stay in this lane and say don't eat it, and maybe eat this that we know is good. But it kind of branches out, and then you have people who think that like eating a stick of butter is healthier than bread just because bread is more processed than butter. Like that, it creates problems, but it goes farther than that, because that's just a problem in the individual, and then individuals have the right to mess up their own lives. But also the other issue comes down to the society in general, because the reality is that there is a problem with American food. Foreigners that come from like areas that have less processing in their food, right? Like who come from like Guatemala and Japan, and they come to America, they get fatter, they get more unhealthy. Now, is it because of the diet? Is it because of the lifestyle? Is it because of the quantity of food that they've started to eat? It's unclear. But it's definitely true that the American lifestyle and what comes with it does carry negative health repercussions and stuff that you would expect from poor dieting. The problem is that once we decide, okay, I'm just gonna do the keto diet, I'm gonna avoid processed food. Now I know what the issue is because I know better than than the CDC. We stop asking the CDC to figure out the problems, which is a problem, because if we have an institution that has all this experience trying to help us, and there's people who have like individually not much power, but throughout the whole country have a lot of power, could push these institutions to try to figure out why Americans are less healthy than these, then we might actually quickly see changes. A lot of the times too, like meaningful change, like there is, like if you wish, like, okay, I'm just gonna eat like a Guatemalan then, right? That's expensive. Like your average American can't afford to eat farm to table like that. Like I just went and got meat from my farmer's market, like one chicken steak, it's not steak, but one chicken breast, 2 steaks. It's like $80 to get it like fresh. Like that, most people would never afford that. Most people are like, oh yeah, I'm not going to spend $80 on like 3 nights of food, like, you know, or a portion of 3 nights of food. Like that's just fair. I'm going to get the stuff at Aldi's. That's, you know, like $5 for like 2 steaks that will feed like me and my kid, you know, like they're going to do that instead of what I did. So, but if we could make the food here more, less expensive and also healthier, then that's a good thing. That doesn't happen when there's people saying, well, I actually know what the answer is and the problems are avoidable. Because then we stop trying to actually fix the problem. We start to just address the symptom and try to work around it with again, like wrong ideas that lead people to eating a stick of butter over bread, and as opposed to trying to get the institution specialized in these problems to fix them. So, and this is not just a like a food issue. Like we're like right now bad at humans right now in America are bad at just dealing with information. They're bad at taking in a bunch of information, looking at the source, and just like having like healthy skepticism where it's on a subject that they don't already find themselves skeptical of. So that's pretty much all I had. I just think it's so important that if there's an idea that's filling in a gap of knowledge where the government fails, it's so easy to be like, well, the government's hiding it, but Occam's razor probably means it's a hard question to answer, or that the question's really subjective or ambiguous, and we just don't like it. But like that's fair if you don't like that, but don't like just turn to an easy answer, because the easy answer will blind you from looking for the truth. So yeah, that's all I got. Hope that was interesting.